I made a skiing minigame for Frog Game. For those unaware, Frog Game, which is a working title, but may end up being the name, is a solo game project that I started around 2 years ago. You play as a frog knight named James Frog Knight, who has been sent from 700 years in the past into the present day, and you have to fight a lot of enemies and bosses and all that. But a while back, I realized that I really wanted to make a few minigames where you could unlock specific gear and maybe also gain experience points. I started out with a bowling minigame since I've bowled a pretty decent amount of times in my life, but the bowling minigame is for another video since at the time of recording this, it clearly has a long way to go. Then I wanted to make a rhythm game. I actually made this prototype after I started working on the skiing minigame, but that kind of ruins the timeline, so just pretend this was before. I've done a lot of either rhythm games or music-based projects in the past, so this seemed pretty doable. Again though, this is for another video. Then I went on a skiing trip, and I learned that skiing is really f***ing hard. I almost passed out on the first day, probably because I didn't eat or drink anything for 4 hours of skiing. I would advise to not do that. But I had fun, and I realized that Frog Game had a snow island that had nothing on it. I did already have the boss for the island, but that was designed to be inside a building, so I could still do anything to the island itself. At first, I wanted to make an entire ski resort, which probably isn't happening, but I might make the castle for this world ski resort themed. I think I watched 1 or 2 skiing videos for inspiration before I started working on the minigame, mostly because I'm lazy. Because I didn't want to model it too closely to anything else. I started off by completely remaking the snow island to be shaped like a slope. Then I started working on the player. Originally, I used a rigid body, which, if you're not familiar, is used for physics in game engines. However, this turned out to be really unfun. Any slight bump in the terrain completely destroyed your speed. I could have made the terrain super slippery, but since I'd have to handle slowing down anyway, I just switched to a default character controller that doesn't have as much built-in physics. It still has some collision detection and stuff, but I made speed and gravity controlled by a custom script. This way, if you hit a small bump, your speed won't decrease, at least not drastically. However, if you hit a large bump, this is currently not super forgiving, so I'll probably play around with it, but I also don't want the minigame to be too easy. The next thing was the gates. I really wanted the gates to be super obvious, so I made a guide that is not meant to be the fastest route, but just a general indicator for where the next gate will be. This took a long time to make, and it was really annoying to work with. Also, don't look underneath the floor. I also added visuals that are meant to represent the colliders you actually have to hit in order for the game to count you as going through the gate. They're blue if it's the next gate you need to go through, red if it's further away, and it goes away once you clear the gate. I set the time penalty for missing a gate to be 5 seconds, which seems to be pretty fair. After testing out the course a lot, there should be no way to skip a gate and save time, opposed to just going through it. When it came time to make the model for all the skiing outfit and gear, I realized that James's eyes are really high up. So not only did I move them down, but I also had to change the default helmet model to fit the new eye placement. I thought about making more detailed textures for the clothes and helmet, but that will only happen if I decide that all of the clothing in the game should be that detailed, which is a lot more work, so I'm leaving it like this for now. As for music, I currently have 2 tracks, and both of them have already been played in this video. Both of them are old tracks that I made years ago for separate things. The first is from an old video I made about 4 years ago called Skiing. Seems fitting. And I'm not gonna lie, I really don't like that video at all anymore, but the music is pretty good, so I redid it for Frog Game. After playtesting over and over again trying to get a sub 30-second time, I was getting tired of listening to the same track over and over, so I started thinking about a second track. If the track from the opener of the video sounded familiar, it's from a game I made 2 years ago about speeding through a snowy climate, again, pretty fitting, called Kelvin. And you may be one of the 3 people that liked it. It's okay, the game kind of sucks. I'm fine, so I redid a track from that game for Frog Game as well. tracks alternate so you won't have to listen to the same song every time, since when you're going for items or achievements, you'll probably be restarting a lot. With all of this, I would say that the skiing minigame is currently the most polished part of the game, which is only slightly concerning. Anyway, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.